The PSVR is a little over 2 years old, but it's only really now that it's hitting its stride thanks to gradual price reductions that make it much more affordable, as well as an increasingly good library of titles to choose from. But what are the 10 must-play games for any new or old PSVR owner? Let's find out. First off, we have Batman Arkham VR. Arkham VR was one of the launch titles for the PSVR, but still a great game to introduce you to the platform. Set within the same universe as the Arkham trilogy, you don the Batsuit like never before as you explore iconic locations such as the Batcave, search for clues, and solve puzzles in order to advance your investigation. Batman Arkham VR won't give you that much in terms of playtime, taking around 1 to 2 hours to complete with not a great deal of replayability, but is an experience that truly sucks you in and shows off the PSVR's capabilities fantastically. Next up, we have a distinctly different and more somber game, Tetris Effect. Tetris is something I'm sure you're all familiar with, but it's a completely different experience in VR, and while it can be played without it on a standard TV, it's clear it was made with PSVR in mind. The gameplay remains pretty much identical to every other Tetris in the past, but it's the visuals, music and effects that all come together so perfectly that really immerses you and makes it shine. Tetris Effect is a surprisingly great VR title, one you shouldn't avoid simply because you've played a Tetris game before. Game number 3 is another visually unique entry, and that's Superhot VR. Superhot is simple but engaging. Your enemies only move when you move. This creates a surprisingly tactical game. You have to think about every decision you make and every weapon you use in order to take out your enemies in any given level. The campaign may only last 2 to 3 hours, but unlike Batman Arkham VR, there is a lot of replayability to be had, and due to the nature of the game, is a great choice for those who are susceptible to motion sickness in many other VR titles. The Elder Scrolls Skyrim is a title you've probably played to some extent or another on one of the many platforms it's been on over the years, but VR makes it feel fresh all over again. Naturally, it looks a little blurry, unlike it would if you were playing on a standard TV, but that's more than made up by the increased level of immersion and therefore easy to look past. You have a few control schemes to take advantage of, either by simply using a DualShock 4 or a pair of Move controllers, where you can freely wield a weapon in each hand, which I absolutely recommend to do to get the full experience as the legendary Dragonborn. If exploring and fighting isn't necessarily your thing and you just want an adrenaline rush, then maybe consider the Wipeout Amiga collection. The Amiga collection originally released in 2017 without any VR support until it was later patched in early last year, and despite technically being an afterthought, the result comes across as anything but that, with extremely sharp, clean graphics, solid performance, and gameplay that translates fantastically into VR. Unlike other games such as Gran Turismo Sport, you can play the entirety of the collection in VR, so there is a ton of content to really sink your teeth into. Moving on from the fast pace of Wipeout, we have a slower, more methodical adventure game called Moss. Moss places you in the hands of Quill, a small mouse that sets out on an adventure to defeat an evil snake and save her uncle with the help of you, the reader, as you guide her along the way. The gameplay is a nice mix of exploration, puzzle solving and combat, with each section never overstaying its welcome. While not that challenging for the most part, it's great fun from start to finish across its 5-hour story. Ever wondered what Rainbow Six Siege would be like in VR? Well, look no further, as that's essentially what Firewall 0 Hour has attempted to be and accomplished quite well. Firewall utilises the aim controller, giving you the feeling of holding an actual gun as you attack or defend enemies offline or online. Its offline component is quite basic, there is no story campaign. However, the online is robust enough to keep you engaged, and the online community is really welcoming, much more than in any other shooter I've seen, with many often willing to aid and help you get to grips with the controls. The next title definitely isn't for the faint of heart. If you thought Resident Evil 7 was tense and frightening when played on a TV, that's increased tenfold when played in VR, but if that's something you're after, it won't disappoint. Due to being designed primarily for play on a TV, there isn't any motion control support aside from head tracking, but the added level of immersion makes it the best way to play, with no compromises at all in terms of content. Resident Evil 7 may not be the best to ease you into the world of VR, but it's absolutely one that will evoke some of the biggest responses from players. Entry number 9 is Beat Saber, a game that's been on the PC VR platforms for a while now, but it's finally dropped on the PSVR. Like Superhot, Beat Saber's premise is extremely simple. You have 2 sabers, one red and one blue, and need to cut oncoming blocks in certain directions in time with the music. Despite its simplicity, it's one of the most addictively fun titles out there, one that initially seems quite easy, but quickly ramps up in difficulty, giving you a surprisingly good workout you'll definitely feel the next morning. The PSVR version is a remarkable port that matches the PC version in almost every way, sadly minus the ability to run custom songs, but that aside, it's perfect to sell anyone on VR. The 10th and final game is Astrobot Rescue Mission, arguably the best all-round title for the PSVR at the moment. Based on footage, you may think Astrobot is a standard run-of-the-mill platformer, and to some extent, that is kinda true, but makes use of VR in some of the best ways I've seen yet, from its incredible sense of scale, variety of its levels, numerous boss battles, as well as the way it involves you, the player, into its world. Astrobot may look like a simple, childish platformer, but it has a lot of depth and charm to it and shouldn't be ignored. That's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and hit that bell icon to receive notifications when future videos are posted. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.